Welcome to the Exhibit A podcast.
We're on. Louise Nixon, Debbie Soleimani, you're here today on Exhibit A. Thank you for coming. This is the informative show that talks about family law issues, other legal issues, and sometimes some fun topics as well. Louise Nixon, I've known you for several years. I think that we probably met shortly after I started my practice, but you've been in the Pasadena area just about all your professional life, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. And for those of our viewers who don't know, Louise Nixon is a specialist in QDROs. And what's a QDRO, Debbie?
It's a qualified domestic relations order.
Very good. You get the gold star today. Okay. And really what the topic today is going to be about how to divide retirement plans. You know, a lot of people that come into our office wanting to get a divorce talk about their legal issues. And when we get to the property portions, there's a couple of issues that are thorny. They're a little bit icky for us family law attorneys. One of them is the family residence. You know, it's usually the biggest asset of the marriage, and you have to deal with separate property interest and getting appraisals and who's going to keep the house and all those things. Once we get past the house portion, then we usually look at what? The retirement, right?
Accounts,
yeah. And Debbie, I think that you would agree that we are very thankful that we have somebody like Louise Nixon who lives within our community that we could call on and say, help.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because it's a whole body of law, and most family law attorneys don't do what we call QDRO preparation. You know, it's a specialized area of law. It involves federal law, and thank goodness we do have Louise. Let's talk a little bit about you. Okay, so I did a little research before you came in today. Although I've known you for a long time, there are some things that I didn't know about you.
Okay.
Now, first of all,
I'm scared.
don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You know I love you. Okay, so you grew up in the area. I knew that already. And what I didn't know is that you have an undergraduate at UC Davis. That's where my daughter went to school.
Oh,
One of my
wow.
daughters, yeah.
Wow.
What was your major over there?
It was international relations,
Ooh, interesting.
political science. Yeah.
Okay. Did you ride a bike like crazy when you were up there?
Yeah, there was a lot of biking. Yeah. At one point, my friends and I, we just said, we're not biking anymore. So we just, we protested the bikes.
Well, then you used the black Cadillacs, right? Your shoes, because they don't allow cars up there, I don't think. Okay.
Right.
Now, I didn't know this also about you, is when you graduated from UC Davis, you worked as a legislative aide in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Now, you had to have been asked this before. Is the last... Actually, that's your married name is Nixon, right?
Yeah,
So you didn't have that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What brought you to D.C.? I mean, that's very... Was it related to your undergraduate degree?
Yeah. I mean, I thought I studied international relations. What better place to go to? So I just showed up there. I didn't have a job. I just tried to make it happen. I ended up getting an internship initially at the Organization of American States, the OAS, and then started meeting people, and then got a job on the Hill with Congresswoman Bobby Fiedler.
Wow. How long were you there?
For 2 years.
Wow. Yeah. Great experience.
Great experience.
Okay, so now this part Debbie and I do know about you is that you're a court-appointed expert on QDROs, but you're also a frequent guest speaker. And I've been to, I can't even count how many seminars I've been in when you've sat at the table and you've given instruction and lessons to family law attorneys. Recently, you've become the CEO of QDRO Counsel. What is that?
Well, I have my law firm, which is QDRO Benefits Law Group, and that's where I have a staff, an associate attorney, Lorena Duffy, and we do the QDRO work for family law attorneys, pension division, and it just has. I've been before that. Just I'll regress one moment here. I was a plan attorney. Building right next door for 14 years, representing some major pension plans. So my whole career, I've been dealing with retirement benefits and divorces, and it has become so apparent to me that, you know, there are 1 million divorces a year, and there are only about 40 people in the country that know what I know.
Wow.
And so I thought, how can I change this paradigm? How can I empower the family law attorneys to have a better understanding at the beginning of the case how to handle retirement benefit division? That was the impetus for starting this web-based startup, which we are launching right now, called QDRO Counsel.
Awesome. Yeah, so I was going to mention that, you know, prior to you going into your own practice, that you did work for many years representing several union multi-employer trust funds. You got a lot of experience in there, but you're really an entrepreneur. I mean, when I saw how you segued into your own law practice, and now that you're the CEO of QDRO Counsel, you've got a real flair for business, which is very, very cool. You're also what I would consider, now this is, if you compare these two ladies here, we've got kind of odds here. Okay, you're a transactional person. You don't litigate. You're somebody that has a balanced life, right? You walk around with a smile on your face. You enjoy your weekends. Debbie, on the other hand, you're a litigator, right?
I enjoy my weekends.
You sleep, well, you do, but you sleep with one eye open, and you work, like a crazy person. So that's how attorneys are divided pretty much, and I wish that I could be like you, but I can't, okay? So I envy you.
Well, no, I envy that you can do that. I reached a point at my former law firm that I could not litigate anymore. I said, that's it. I'll be the expert, but I don't want to deal with all the difficulties that happen
kudos
in
to you.
litigation.
Yeah. So, and since you're from this general area, you grew up in San Marino, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you're an expert, Debbie. You're an expert. Grew up in Santa Monica. I want to know one thing before we get into our topic: is what is about this weather here? As of today, we're filming. This week we've had 35-degree weather. Okay. I've lived in Southern California since the early '80s. I came here because it was supposed to be warm, right? And I looked, and it was like colder here than it was Chicago and New York, and there's only one place colder, and that was Seoul, Korea. So, is this the coldest winter that you've ever experienced out here? You can't
I have
remember.
no idea, but it has been very cold, and I saw a picture of Mount Baldy that I've never seen before. I mean, Mount
Beautiful.
Baldy, usually you see the snow caps, but this was, the snow was down very, very far in the mountains, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I used to go up there with my kids. I love that place. Okay, let's get into our topic. And the topic, again, is going to be how are retirement plans divided in family court? So, again, a client comes into my office, we talk about the property involved in their marriage, and we get to the retirement plan. They're really nervous, particularly if they're what we call the out spouse, not the person that worked within the job. They're like, am I going to get any of this? So maybe you could start off by telling us what is community property when it comes to a retirement plan, and how are they basically divided?
Well, before I can answer that, there are basically two types of plans: a defined contribution plan, which is your 401k savings plans. For the audience, you're looking at statements, and you get those monthly, quarterly statements, and you see how much money you're putting in there. It's coming from you, pre-tax from your paycheck, and also matching from your employer in most cases. And then there's defined benefit plans, and these are the plans that are missed all the time, because those plans, you don't get a statement on those. There's no value to them until date of retirement. And defined benefit plans are for mid to large companies. Most of them offer, and well, they don't offer them. You are, by virtue of being employed, you are contributing, or the employer is contributing on your behalf to a defined benefit plan. So how they're divided depends on the type of plan.
Okay, so going back down to community property, let's assume hypothetically that a man and woman meet in 1990. They met in 1990, okay? The man had worked for a private industry for 10 years prior to that has a defined benefit plan. After marrying, they lived together for another 10 years, and then unfortunately, like many of our cases, the marriage doesn't work out.
That's how you know about it.
That's right. They come into my office, and the woman's with it saying, "Hey, how much of this is mine?" So what could she expect as far as that?
So the way that those are divided, and it's conceptually, I think, sometimes really hard, and I say this and explain it to clients every day, is when an employee is working for a company, he or she is earning service credits, and those credits are valued at retirement. So what California courts do, and actually almost all the courts across the country, is they divide they determine the community interest based on what's called a marital fraction, or in California it's called the time rule. And to define the community interest, that you take the credits that have accrued during marriage over the total credits through the date of retirement. So if that fraction then is multiplied by 50%. That fraction defines what the total community interest is. So that if the employee is still working for the company, the fraction is getting smaller, right? Because 1/3 1/4 is larger than 1/8, right? The number on the bottom is getting small, or the cause is getting larger, so the fraction is getting smaller. But the value of the pension, because the participants increasing more, is still working there and increasing the credits, is getting larger because there's more in the total pot. So the former spouse will end up, whenever retirement occurs, to get a smaller share of a larger pension. And so that's how I try to explain it to people, and they can conceptually understand it. And California courts have ruled that that is the fairest way we can ascertain what the community interest is.
Okay, so putting it in real simple lay terms so that I can understand it, it also means that the separatizer, the person who had the pension benefits beforehand, does maintain some separate property interest in the plan.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Now 401ks, are they divided differently?
Yes.
How are they divided?
So because with 401ks, you know the value of the pension, it's on a statement that you're getting. Those are valued, in California, it's as a date of separation. Whatever the value is in there that accrued during the marriage is divided 50-50, plus the gains or losses are also part of the community interest in California.
Okay, and again, a spouse could have some separate property interest in the 401k.
Right, and that's where it gets a little tricky because most plans, in fact, almost 99% of them, do not maintain records. They have no obligation to, and so any separate property premarital interest, like in the example you gave, that everything that accrued before marriage, the parties would have to determine in California what it was separate property and what was marital property through date of separation.
And usually there's an actuary or somebody that helps out with that.
Right, a forensic accountant can do that, and then also with my new website, the family law attorney will be able to do that.
One thing I think it's important for our viewers and our listeners is that not all retirement accounts have to be divided or are divided by a QDRO. For example, IRAs, we don't divide those through a QDRO. That's right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, for IRAs, you can divide those in a judgment.
Okay.
What happens with the when I get involved with IRA division is when the judgment doesn't. Let me backtrack. IRAs can only be awarded as of date of distribution. So whatever percentage or amount is in there, that's going to be what's going to happen when the custodian gets the judgment and wants to divide it.
Mm-hmm.
So if the judgment language doesn't say that, then they can't divide it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I get involved with that and do what's called a 408 order, because that's the law, the Internal Revenue Code section that governs IRAs, and we can do an IRA to IRA transfer. And some people just want to do 408 orders in addition to the judgment language because there's extra enforcement language, and it's very clear. SEP IRAs, some custodians will require for SEP IRAs because those are employer related. Some custodians will require a QDRO with that kind of an IRA. Not most of them don't.
So let me give you another hypothetical. We talked about the classic case of the husband coming in and he's got 10 years worth of contributions to a retirement plan. Now we're in the modern age, right? We're in Debbie's age here. You got both parties that come into the marriage with, retirement benefits, his and hers. You got a mixture of them. Are there occasions where you're not going to get a QDRO on every single one of those retirement plans?
Yeah, I definitely offsetting, equalization and offsets occur in family law cases all the time. And I would say that it's never going to be as perfect in terms of the division when you do that, because there's without going into detail, there's an end date and there's always a moving target. So you can never have it, the offset be perfect, because the investment choices, if they're different, can affect what the other side will get versus one party will get over the other. But I don't recommend equalization and offsets with a defined benefit plan and a defined contribution plan. That's like apples and oranges.
So you don't know the value.
We don't know the value. You can get a present day actuarial value. And actually, I shouldn't say that. I see that happen when it's a very short marriage, and the parties are young, And they don't want to. The other one side just says, I don't want to wait for
Right.
25 years to get a very small value of your defined benefit plan. Let's offset that against the 401k and call it a day. So I do definitely see that.
So equalization offset is just kind of like, we think yours is worth maybe around this much. We think mine is worth this maybe around this much. Let's just kind of call it a day. Or I'll take that, you take this.
Right.
Okay.
There's a lot of swapping that
Yeah.
goes on for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the story of most family law cases. You never get down to the very, exact amount of pennies that goes,
And what the parties have to understand, I know you guys do such a great job at managing their expectations, because it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
I live in a very gray world, and I mean, in some ways emotionally, people get so riled up, and I'm like, I can't do anything
Right,
about it. This
right.
is the law. In most cases, for private plans, it's federal law, which preempts state law, and there are many restrictions on what can happen in terms of how it affects their interests that we dance around.
So there's also the situation where somebody wants to be bought out of a retirement plan of some sort, and I always gets down to the taxes and penalties portion of the conversation. That's where I really get lost in it, because people are saying, well, if you bought me out of of your retirement plan, there's tax consequences. Could you explain that a little bit?
I really don't get involved with that.
Okay.
Because I don't see that side. I'm involved
true. That is true.
after they decide we're going to divide
Okay.
this. Let's send it to Louise. So I don't get involved
Okay.
with the negotiating.
So you can't help me with that nightmare.
But to that note, the other thing is that when you're thinking about a buyout of a future interest, one of the other things that you have to think about is, what is the present day value? You're looking at, Louise was talking to us about a pension. It doesn't have a value right now. It only
Correct.
it has a value up when that person retires. So when you're thinking about a buyout right now, like you were saying, we can use like an actuary or a forensic accountant or someone to kind of give us an estimate about what the value would be then. But then we have to kind of change it, because it's right now. It's not in 25 or 30 years from now.
Yeah.
That's something we have to think about.
Yeah. Hiring of experts. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the details of how it works. So I'm sitting in my office, the client hires me, and one of the first things I say is, you got to meet Louise Nixon. Okay. So somewhere along the process, what we do is we hire your services. Now, what exactly do you do? Well, I could tell you what you do, but you prepare the QDRO for us, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then, so long as everybody agrees on it, it is served on it's filed with the judge signs it, then it goes back and it's served on the pension plan, or the administrator, I guess, in some cases, right?
Correct. Yes.
And then at that point, they have rules and instructions as to how to pay it out at the time of retirement.
Right. They will. Then the client will contact the plan directly and find out. For a 401k, if they can decide whether they want to move the money or not, or just leave it there. I would always say take it out and control it. For a defined benefit plan, they can get estimates on what the monthly benefit will be, because the plans generally will not give an estimate on what the monthly benefit will be at any given date until they're actually served with a filed qualified domestic relations order.
Okay. And there are some complicated scenarios that you're involved with. One of them that haunts me are military retirement plans. Can you explain why those are so difficult?
So, yes, I mean, military is crazy, and it just keeps getting crazier. But there's so many variables in play at this point with military because of a new law that passed 2 years ago. In addition to the difficulties beforehand with the different restrictions. So now, I don't know.
Keep it simple.
My brain is going. So I'll just give, one plug or what I've been working on finalizing for the QDRO Council website. So you will be able to
Me?
do these. Yes.
Oh God, man, you're gonna make that's
so
a great program. You're gonna make
exciting.
me understand it.
And no, what's great about it is I showed Carl Mace over there that picture of the flow chart. I'm gonna frame it. It is so crazy.
Wow.
Okay.
All where everything goes, but you just are prompted with the questions, because there's so many variables that affect what you need to get to make the division. There's the whole issue of discovery, which makes it very difficult because you have to get the participant to cooperate or the court order to force them to, because it's very hard to subpoena information out of the military. You can't join the military, we can talk about that, and federal employees. So and the military won't put a hold on anything until they're served with the actual correct court order. It's hard to protect survivor benefits, so that's a whole issue. So I recommend for military and for federal employees to not file your judgment of dissolution until all those issues are fleshed out. Actually, I recommend the best possible practice, and you guys, your firm does such a great job at bringing me in, at least in the middle of the case when you know what is going to happen. So you have the judgment language correct. We try to get the quad result done before judgment, so everything is filed right around the same time and there's no issues. But for federal employees and military, it's really critical to do that.
Okay. Well, I don't want to go any further into that because it is very complicated. I just know this is that the out spouse in a military retirement plan isn't treated the same as other pension plans.
And there was also a United States Supreme Court decision, Howell, that came down last year. I think it was last May.
Disability?
On disability.
Yeah.
So depending on the type of disability, which in most cases, if it's less than 50%, the outspouse pension would be reduced, but there's no cure for that.
Okay. Well, we have this thing that's called QDRO, and we have a thing that's called DRO. What are the differences?
So there's just a technicality that nerds like me get caught up on. But a qualified domestic relations order is really a term of art that is identified in the federal law in ERISA, ERISA is the acronym for that. There's a lot of, we call it alphabet soup. There's a lot of acronyms. The Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And that's federal law that preempts state law that governs all private plans. A DRO is just a domestic relations order, and that applies to all public plans. So whether they're state plans, CalPERS, CalSTRS, or federal plans, military or federal employees, that's a DRO.
Okay, Debbie, as you know, in our world, when we find out that there's a government plan, we need to do a joinder,
You
correct?
have to join the plan.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we don't do a QDRO per se. There's a domestic relations order.
You do a DRO.
Yeah, okay.
So I think it's important to explain why that the plan has to be joined into the action. So the plan becomes like a party. You have spouse one, spouse two, and the plan. And that's because if the plan doesn't know that there's a dissolution going on, then it could potentially pay out to one of the spouses. Is that right?
Yes.
It could.
Yes.
Yeah.
And joinder is the best remedy, as if the plan, especially for public plans, will put a hold on
To
it.
stop.
Private plans
Yeah.
may put a hold on the account
Yeah.
to join them. It's always a good idea to join if you
Really?
can.
You suggest joining private plans as well?
Sometimes it doesn't do any good,
Okay.
but if it's possible, it doesn't hurt to
Oh,
do it.
Okay, I didn't know that. You learn something every day.
Or even if you don't want to join them because the client doesn't want to spend the money, you could do a notice of efforts interest. Just give the private plan notice.
Okay.
And an actual private plan doesn't have any obligation to put a hold on the account under federal law until they're served with a domestic relations order that they can determine whether it's qualified or not. So that's an actual court order, and joinders are not court orders.
Mhm.
So, I would say 70% of them have a procedure in place that if they're served with some sort of notice, that they're going to put a hold on it because they don't want to pay double. They don't want to have any problems. So.
Okay. I want to conclude this wonky talk with two final areas, and one of them is going to be when people have support arrears. You know, I've got a client whose husband hasn't paid child or spousal support, for the past 5 years, but there's a retirement plan out there. Is there anything that a QDRO, a qualified domestic relations order, can do to provide some relief to my client?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do a QDRO for support. So that's for a defined contribution plan for the arrears. Just you go after those and get a lump sum amount to pay off the arrears if there's some sort of 401k. And then for a defined benefit plan, the participant has to be retired to get the monthly income, but you can do a QDRO to get that income for support.
What about attorney's fees?
So you can get attorney's fees. We know for sure in the Ninth Circuit, which is the law governing California, that you can get attorney's fees for support in a case called well, it's Tice it's Directors Guild versus Tice. And so we know we can get fees for that. There is authority that with a QDRO you can get fees that are related for sure for support, but definitely I've seen it for marital interest as well.
Beautiful. Love it. Okay. Now I want to go back to QDRO Counsel, because you got to sell me on this thing. So you sell me and every other family law attorney that's watching this program. They've got to do it. So tell us about the new program.
Well, what we have been working on, there's a whole team behind me to do this, is, again, what I was saying at the beginning, I don't think family law attorneys know where to start. They don't have the resources. What really struck me and what I've known for sure for so many years is that family law attorneys, you guys have to know so much about so many different areas of law. You have to know some real estate. You have to know estate planning. You have to know at least where to go to when you don't know. And for retirement division, it's just, to me, it's insane that family law attorneys don't know more or can't know more, honestly, until now, because they can't get access to this information. Judges, too. Mm-hmm. Judges are really excited about this. We're going to give this to the self-help centers and the court system
that's nice.
So that they can have some way to understand pension division from the beginning, because really it should start at the beginning of your case. So our QDRO Counsel, we have the questionnaires that we give our clients that you guys will have access to, family law attorneys, and be able to know what the questions are all there to prompt and understand what is needed in the case. Mm-hmm. And then our database has 155,000 plans in it. So you look up by employer, you won't miss a plan. And that's what so many judgments I get are missing plans. Mm-hmm. They're not named correctly. They're not divided correctly, which is another issue. And so it leads to problems post-judgment that come up in our office all the time. So I was just thought, how can I change the paradigm of how to manage this for family law attorneys, how they can better manage their practice? And we have this plan analysis tool where you put in the facts that now you've gathered. We have automated joinders that take very little time to use. And the plan analysis tool, you put in the basic facts and you're emailed immediately a report, which you can show the client and say, this is what we need to do in your case. We have a separate property issue. We need to deal with that. And then you go to the calculation suite. We have different ways you can estimate, because there's never any statements on how to deal with that issue. We have present day actuarial evaluation. And then also, I think critical to family law practice is judgment language, because that's where the issues arise. That's where malpractice is. Yeah. The QDRO just facilitates what's written in the judgment. Right. And we have a lot of issues with judgment language not protecting survivor benefits, which can be extremely detrimental for the out spouse. And then all the other things I mentioned about, omitted plans and things like that. Right. So what I've done is have this tool. It's case-specific and plan-specific judgment language so that you will get the right language for your judgments on a case-by-case basis. The whole goal is to enable the family law attorney to be able to serve their clients better with this resource. The plans are most times the major asset in the case. Wow. Yeah. And to enable them and empower them to be able to use this program, with like the Decimal Master or whatever, the program to help facilitate retirement benefit division from beginning to the end. And by the way, you can do QDROs with it too. I would say that this program is focused on 80% of your cases. There's still going to be the cases that, and my law practice isn't going anywhere. I'm not going, but I'll have more time to deal with the more difficult cases. Honestly, if family law attorneys are taking this, or even if you don't want to do the QDROs, everything up until QDROs is so critical to be able to be a better family law attorney for your clients. So that's the whole point, is to give you the resources you need.
We're excited about it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Well, no, what's impressive is that you also have some support staff too. So if there's a question or something, somebody could call in and say, and you help people set it up. And I think that your company, and actually I know this, is that it's nationwide. I mean, the QDRO is not unique to California because of ERISA.
Right. I have a big mission in the life. I've got another maybe hopefully 30 years left. I don't know.
You're going to conquer the world.
I just want to change the paradigm nationwide because this is not exclusive to California. We just got a call last week from a judge in Texas that found out what we were doing.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's like, we need the same. We were talking about the same problems. He's like, that's exactly what I see here in Texas.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
Well, congratulations. And
It's great.
yeah, we'll be signing up for your program after this podcast. Okay. Now I want to change the topic to something probably more intellectual. Okay. Actually, it's going to be a lot lighter and fun. So I read this a couple of weeks ago, and it dealt with a woman who was about to get married. Okay. She had planned her wedding out. Debbie, I want you to definitely chime in with your legal analysis. It has something to do with divorces. So she's getting ready to marry the man of her dreams, right? And she invites all of her friends and family to the wedding. There's about 100 that are going to be at the wedding ceremony. She picks out the dress, spends the money, gets everything ready. And this is what the article says. She says, while lounging around with her bridesmaid on the night before the wedding, she receives a series of screenshots and selfies from an unknown number with an accompanying text. Quote, I wouldn't marry him. Will you? The screenshots were of conversations between, and this is her talking now, my husband-to-be and another woman. Loads of them, including selfies of the pair. She was the opposite of me. This woman is blonde and fair. The unknown woman is dark-haired, olive skin. The texts were dated from months to only days before the wedding. And she says, my brain couldn't compute what is going on here. So she's struggling with this. Okay, now, what would most people do, Louise, the night before the wedding? What do you think? Call it off?
Most people will call it off.
Okay, well, hang on to your seat here for a second, okay? This woman didn't call it off, okay? She goes forward with the wedding. And imagine this. You've got all the people in the pews, coming from out of state. They got the reception afterwards. The man, he's just glowing, right? He's got his mom and dad there, and he's walking down the aisle. And he gets up there, and when the clergyman asks them to say their vows, this is what she does. She says, instead of repeating after him, I read every single message she sent me. With each word, more color left Alex's face. I guess the groom was Alex. I let my weeping eyes rise and meet his, and he had not one thing to say. He stalked out of the church with his best man trailing behind him. His family looked on horrified. Instead of following Alex out of the church, I decided to get the most of my money and had the reception afterwards. I had a big party. What do you think?
I love that.
That was a little mean, wasn't it?
I don't know if I could do that.
It was mean of who? Of the wife or the husband?
So now you're wondering why. I mean, there's a certain answer.
Insane.
It is insane. Isn't this starting to answer why maybe the younger generation's not getting married anymore? Because women
they aren't, are they?
No.
They're really not.
Every time I do this podcast with Don, he brings this up. Why isn't the younger generation getting married?
Well, it's because of examples like this. I mean, she had a couple of choices, right? She could have gotten married to him, and work it out, going to counseling, or she could have. But instead, she goes on the attack and scars this poor man for life.
Scars this poor man for life. I think the difference is that now we have a lot more access to things like this, like
That's
text
true.
messages.
Oh, it's truth tellers.
And screenshots.
Yeah, be
and
careful.
projectors. You put up all the pictures and the images. So
God,
I think that's.
I wonder how that reception went afterwards.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
A lot of
Without
dancing.
the guy and dancing and all the gifts and the
Yeah.
food to herself. Sounds like a party.
Okay. Well, Louise, that had nothing to do with QDROs, but I thought I'd bring you in on that analysis there. Thank you very much for coming
Thank
today.
you.
Louise.
Thank you.
It was really,
appreciate
Very
you
helpful.
having
Very
me.
nice for you to
Yeah.
come here. I look forward to learning more about the program.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank
And
you.
thank you again for joining us on Exhibit A, and we'll see you next time.
Exhibit A is produced by David Lindley at the law offices of Donald P. Schweitzer in Pasadena, California. For more information, visit us online at PasadenaLawOffice.com and all social media platforms.